I had just concluded my quarterly presentation, a meticulously crafted analysis showing how we'd surpassed the $75 million revenue threshold, when Marcus Blackwell, our newly appointed CEO, rose from his chair, adjusted his designer watch, and cleared his throat with deliberate emphasis. "Before we adjourn," he announced with a smile that never quite reached his eyes, "I have one final matter to address regarding our leadership restructuring." My fingers froze above my laptop, the final slide still glowing behind me. A vibrant graphic titled Q3 Revenue Milestone, Breaking New Ground. Marcus strode purposefully toward the front of the boardroom. Around the massive mahogany table, our executive team sat in uncomfortable silence. Some looked confused. Others, the ones who'd been gathering in hushed circles lately, avoided my gaze completely. "Effective immediately," Marcus continued, "Sophia will be stepping down as Chief Strategy Officer. Her contributions have been valuable, and we extend our sincere appreciation." He paused dramatically. "However, as we accelerate into a new phase of aggressive market expansion, we need fewer constraints in strategic planning and more rapid execution. Sophia's talent lies in methodical analysis, but at this juncture, we require speed and agility." A peculiar silence fell over the room, not a shocked silence but something worse. Complicit silence. "If I recall correctly," Marcus added with casual disdain, "your exact words at last week's executive retreat were that we should conduct proper market research and build sustainable frameworks before rushing into expansion. That kind of caution has its place, but not in our current trajectory. Thank you for your dedication." He turned to address the team as if his explanation had been perfectly reasonable. I studied him, this man who had joined NextGen Solutions barely 4 months ago, and smiled. "I appreciate the clarity," I replied simply. "No dramatics, no protests, just composure." I stepped away as Marcus commandeered the presentation system and launched into a slide titled Phase 3, Accelerated Growth Strategy. I walked back to my office with the casual air of someone heading to a coffee break. They had no idea what I had already set in motion. 8 weeks earlier, when Marcus had been installed by the board, I'd sensed a fundamental shift. He came from a background of rapid turnover venture firms, places where decisions emerged from spreadsheets and ambition, not people. From his first day, he viewed me not as a collaborator but as an impediment to bulldoze. I had created the company's flagship product line 7 years ago. I had assembled the team, written the comprehensive playbook, and when our founding CEO had retired due to family commitments, it was I who prevented the company from faltering. I never sought accolades. I sought loyalty. I received neither. Instead, I noticed subtle changes. Meetings scheduled without my knowledge, strategies reversed without consultation, and a growing impression that Marcus was crafting a corporate narrative where I was becoming increasingly irrelevant. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I overheard his executive assistant on speakerphone, scheduling a dinner with our primary technology partner. My partner, the one I had personally cultivated a relationship with for 6 years. "The concept," he told the partner's representative, "is to transition Sophia out discreetly. It'll create a smoother process." They intended to erase me, but I had already begun implementing precautionary measures. I had recognized the warning signs, and I possessed information they didn't. Our most critical technology partner, Quantum Matrix Systems, had been experiencing financial instability. I'd been quietly reviewing their quarterly statements and knew they were seeking acquisition. The opportunity was perfect. I reached out to an old colleague from business school, now a venture capital partner in Chicago. We submitted an offer through a holding company I had established discreetly the previous year. It was a clean acquisition, silent, legitimate, and unobtrusive. By the time Marcus contacted their CEO to exclude me from partnership negotiations, he was politely but firmly informed that all communications would now proceed through the holding company's new leadership team. He never made the connection. So when he announced my termination before the executive team, when he smiled as if he'd just eliminated the final obstacle to his precious Phase 3, I maintained my composure because while Marcus was preparing his strategy, I was acquiring the foundation he stood upon. Back in my office, I methodically packed my belongings. Family photograph. The titanium fountain pen my team presented me last winter. A leather-bound copy of Good to Great, filled with my handwritten annotations. I arranged everything neatly in a box, then turned toward the glass wall. Through it, I could see Marcus laughing with the CFO. I smiled again, softly. By this time tomorrow, the emails would begin arriving. The contracts would undergo revision, and within 3 days, panic would replace that smug confidence. Because the essential infrastructure of the company's technology ecosystem, the partner they couldn't possibly replace, was now under my ownership. And I was finished with subtlety. Friday morning, I received a professionally detached email from Human Resources. Subject: Transition Protocol. Sophia, please complete the attached checklist prior to 5 p.m. today. We will coordinate your severance package and benefits transfer accordingly. Additionally, Marcus has requested that you prepare a knowledge transfer document for your successor. Regards, Vanessa. People and Culture. I laughed quietly. The man terminates me in front of my colleagues, then requests a favor as if we're exchanging pleasantries. Nevertheless, I responded with a brief message. Vanessa, I will ensure all deliverables are properly documented. Regards, Sophia. This wasn't merely professionalism. It was calculation. Every file I submitted would be immaculate, precise, and just incomplete enough to make them dependent on a partner they no longer controlled. And that partner, Quantum Matrix Systems, they still hadn't pieced together the connection. At 10:17 a.m., I received a call from Alexandra, my attorney. They've started investigating, she said. A junior procurement manager at your former company contacted Quantum Matrix, asking why they haven't approved a new implementation schedule. We responded officially, referenced the recent acquisition, and informed them that the new leadership team will oversee future discussions directly. They'll escalate by Monday, I predicted, especially when they realize how critical Quantum Matrix is to their Phase 3 rollout. They have a dependency they never bothered to verify, Alexandra noted, with subtle amusement. Congratulations. You now control their technological foundation. I reclined in my chair, gazing at the collection of framed awards I hadn't packed yet. Most recognized achievements in strategic innovation, technological integration, market growth, all earned during my tenure. They used to celebrate those accomplishments until I became inconvenient. That evening, I met with Elise, one of the few individuals at the company I still trusted. She slid into the booth at our regular wine bar, eyes wide with excitement. It's all anyone's talking about, she whispered. Marcus was arrogant all afternoon, but around 3 o'clock something changed. He suddenly seemed rattled. I stirred my drink. Was it related to Quantum Matrix? She nodded eagerly. They were supposed to finalize the next quarter's implementation this week, but the call was redirected. Legal mentioned something about ownership restructuring. Now Marcus is demanding explanations. I raised an eyebrow. So he's finally paying attention. Elise leaned closer. He doesn't know, does he? Not yet. What do you think his next move will be? He doesn't have one, she said with certainty. What are you planning to do? I smiled slowly and deliberately. Nothing. I've already done it. On Saturday, I received a meeting request. Not from Marcus, but from their procurement director. Hi, Sophia. I realize circumstances ended awkwardly, but I was hoping to briefly discuss the Quantum Matrix contract. There appears to be internal confusion, and you're the only one who managed those negotiations. Would you consider a quick conversation? James. I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because it was no longer my responsibility. Instead, Alexandra sent a formal letter on behalf of the holding company, Summit Ventures LLC, notifying NextGen Solutions that all further negotiations regarding Quantum Matrix services would be conducted through the company's new client relations director. Sunday evening, just after 9 p.m., my phone vibrated. Caller. Marcus Blackwell. 1 missed call. Voicemail. 1 new message. I didn't listen to it. Alexandra had advised me, let your silence speak volumes. And she was right. Monday morning erupted like a thunderclap at NextGen headquarters. I woke early, prepared my espresso, and accessed the internal dashboards I still had temporary viewing privileges for through the vendor portal. Status indicators flashed red. Unconfirmed Q1 technology integration pending approval. That pending status would paralyze 2 major product lines if left unresolved. At 8:02 a.m. Elise texted. Marcus stormed into the 8 a.m. all-hands meeting. Nobody understood what was happening. He looks like he hasn't slept in days. By 10:30 a.m. LinkedIn was buzzing. A press release had been published. Quantum Matrix Systems announces new ownership under Summit Ventures LLC. The acquisition marks a pivotal evolution in technological leadership and client engagement. Our mission remains unchanged, to deliver exceptional enterprise solutions to our valued partners. It didn't mention my name, but anyone who knew me understood the implications. At 11:12 a.m., I received a terse email from Marcus. We need to speak urgently. I forwarded it to Alexandra. She called 10 minutes later laughing heartily. He's in full panic mode. He finally realized who purchased the kingdom he thought he ruled. And I hadn't even revealed my next strategic move. Quantum Matrix didn't merely provide software components. They engineered the technological architecture for NextGen's most ambitious initiative, a machine learning-powered business intelligence platform. Marcus had staked his entire professional reputation on Quantum Matrix's proprietary algorithms. That project would collapse before launch. In the corridor outside my apartment, footsteps echoed past my door. I glanced at my boxed office belongings, still positioned by the entryway. I hadn't decided whether to unpack them or donate them. It no longer mattered because on paper I was no longer employed by NextGen Solutions. But in reality, they now operated at my discretion. By Tuesday morning, the crisis had officially engulfed NextGen Solutions. I didn't need internal access to witness it. I simply observed the tremor spreading across LinkedIn. A project manager had discreetly updated her status to open to work. 3 engineers from the AI division reshared the Quantum Matrix acquisition announcement with ambiguous captions like, significant industry developments ahead, and when one door closes, another opens. But the true impact began with a calendar invitation sent from Marcus's assistant. Subject line: Urgent leadership meeting 9 a.m. mandatory attendance. Elise texted me at 8:44 a.m. He's visibly distressed. Literally sweating through his shirt when he walked in. He looks like someone just handed him his walking papers written in permanent ink. I smiled into my coffee cup. This wasn't personal retribution. I had no interest in watching Marcus unravel for its own sake. But I was interested in watching the board realize what kind of decision they'd made when they entrusted leadership to someone who couldn't anticipate 3 moves ahead. That morning, Alexandra and I finalized our formal licensing proposal for NextGen Solutions. It wasn't punitive. It was just expensive. Quantum Matrix had previously offered services under a volume discount structure negotiated directly by me, optimized for scalability and growth. That model was now unavailable. What NextGen would now receive was a usage-based framework billed monthly with premium rates for data architecture, integration, technical support, and crucially, access to the proprietary machine learning modules that had become the cornerstone of their next-generation business intelligence platform. Alexandra reviewed the terms again, savoring each detail. Standard enterprise rates plus a 25% premium for custom dependencies, plus exclusivity protections. And of course, public acknowledgement of Quantum Matrix's new ownership structure. Let's deliver it before lunch, I suggested. It'll give them just enough time to lose their appetites. That afternoon, my phone lit up with a message from Elise. Sophia. The engineering team figured it out. You acquired Quantum Matrix? It's spreading through internal channels like wildfire. Marcus is furious. He gathered the entire development team for an emergency meeting behind closed doors. A few minutes later, P.S. 3 directors just asked me if you're hiring. I began typing a response but paused before sending it. Better to let the uncertainty work to my advantage. Meanwhile, Alexandra received a formal reply from NextGen's legal department, acknowledging our proposal without accepting it. They requested discussion of alternative licensing terms. Translation: they couldn't afford it and they hoped I would compromise. I didn't. Instead, Alexandra sent a concise, professional note. As outlined in our proposal, these terms are non-negotiable unless accompanied by a substantial equity position or formal acquisition offer. We understand if NextGen Solutions prefers to explore other providers. There were no other providers. Quantum Matrix wasn't just their vendor. It was their foundation. This wasn't like changing office furniture. Rebuilding what we had developed would require at least 2 years. And they didn't have that luxury of time. That evening, as I walked through my new office at Summit's downtown location, Quantum Matrix's renovated headquarters, I observed the construction team completing the glass walls of our new innovation lab. I watched staff arranging interactive displays and collaborative workstations. And for the first time in months, I experienced something I hadn't felt in too long: belonging. My phone vibrated again. Unknown number. Voicemail received. I played the message. Sophia, this is Marcus. I think we need to start over. I don't understand your ultimate objective here, but you're jeopardizing many careers. People who supported you for years. Consider that. You were better than this. The arrogance disguised as concern made me shake my head in disbelief. I had endangered careers? This man had terminated me in front of the entire leadership team. He had implemented reckless expansion plans, reduced quality assurance budgets, and eliminated flexible work arrangements to boost productivity. Then blamed me when senior developers began resigning. And now suddenly he portrayed himself as the victim. Marcus wasn't concerned about the staff. He was concerned about the board's perception. Elise confirmed it the following morning. He attempted to characterize the vendor situation as unexpected market disruption. The board wasn't convinced. They requested a comprehensive audit of supplier dependencies. He deflected. Then they engaged external auditors. This is collapsing rapidly. I think he realizes his position is untenable. At noon my inbox chimed. Subject: immediate consultation requested, from NextGen Board Chair Thomas Reynolds. Dr. Bennett, on behalf of the Board of Directors at NextGen Solutions, I request a confidential meeting at your earliest convenience. We are evaluating current leadership's management of strategic partnerships and understand you may possess insights relevant to the board's assessment. Please indicate a suitable time to connect. Now that was interesting. I replied, Mr. Reynolds, I would be pleased to arrange time later this week. Thursday or Friday morning would be convenient. Please advise which you prefer. Respectfully, Sophia Bennett, Managing Partner, Summit Ventures. As I clicked send, I leaned back and contemplated the framed quotation on my bookshelf. A gift from one of my engineers at NextGen. Be the leader your future self won't need to apologize for. I had no apologies to make because while Marcus had engaged in office politics, I had built genuine influence. And the situation was far from concluded. Thursday morning arrived crisp and bright, with a sharpness in the air that felt appropriate. I dressed carefully in a charcoal suit with clean lines, platinum cufflinks, and the emerald ring my mother had given me. It was the kind of outfit that communicated, I don't report to you, but you'll wish I did. At precisely 9 a.m., I entered a private conference room on the 27th floor of the Whitmore building, where the NextGen board had reserved space for what they described as a confidential strategic review. The receptionist greeted me warmly. Dr. Bennett, they're expecting you inside. Thomas Reynolds, chairman of the board, stood to greet me. Thank you for coming, Sophia. We appreciate your time. Of course, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. The room was hushed, paneled in rich walnut, with a carafe of coffee sitting untouched on the credenza. 7 board members sat at the table, their expressions ranging from neutral to uncomfortable. They weren't certain how I would present myself. Angry, bitter, triumphant. Instead, I brought composure. I understand you've requested insight regarding the quantum matrix situation, I began. Thomas nodded. It has escalated beyond our expectations. I suspected it might. I placed an elegant leather portfolio on the table. Here you'll find a chronology of events, correspondence, financial filings, all confirming that Quantum Matrix was legitimately acquired by Summit Ventures as of 3 weeks ago. We are now the exclusive provider of your AI architecture and own the algorithmic frameworks currently powering approximately 70% of your next-generation initiative. Silence descended and I continued. You'll note that at the time of acquisition, I was no longer employed by NextGen Solutions, which means legally there exists no conflict of interest. Only a failure to recognize operational vulnerability on your current leadership's part. A board member in a Navy suit leaned forward. Why wasn't this flagged by Marcus? Perhaps, I said evenly, because he didn't anticipate it. That resonated. I watched them exchange glances. Thomas cleared his throat. He told us the vendor disruption resulted from internal restructuring, that Quantum Matrix had overextended its resources. I shook my head. Quantum Matrix is more financially stable now than at any point in the past 5 years. What's unstable is Marcus's assumption that eliminating institutional knowledge was the optimal strategy. I paused, then added quietly, sometimes the constraint isn't the person who proceeds cautiously. It's the one who doesn't recognize what they're risking. Later that day, back at Summit's office, I met with my leadership team. We were reviewing the final terms of the revised licensing agreement NextGen was now being urged to accept. It's reasonable, said Alexandra. We even included a 4-month transition period at their previous pricing tier to ease the adjustment. They won't perceive it that way, I replied. But it's fair. We're not seeking punitive measures. We're protecting our intellectual property and establishing precedent. Across the table, our CTO David displayed a real-time dashboard showing incoming client inquiries since the press release. We've received outreach from 14 enterprise-level organizations, he reported. Several are NextGen competitors inquiring about migrating to our platform. I studied the list. 2 names immediately caught my attention. I had pursued those clients for years at NextGen, only to be told they were unattainable. Now they were contacting us directly. By Friday, the board had convened an emergency executive session. Elise kept me informed via text. Rumor suggests Marcus won't survive the weekend. They've restricted his system access. Legal department is involved. Interesting development. He just discovered the development team included you in the final documentation repository before your departure. The access logs are timestamped. It proves you were operating with integrity throughout. I contemplated that word, integrity. It didn't bring satisfaction. It brought resolution. This wasn't about revenge. This was about recognition. About being dismissed and told you're an impediment. After 7 years of building something from inception, it was about demonstrating what happens when they underestimate the woman who had reviewed every code module, established every partnership, and mentored half the professionals now sustaining the company. That evening, just before closing my laptop for the weekend, I received another message. Subject: formal response to licensing proposal from Thomas Reynolds. Dr. Bennett, the board has evaluated Summit Ventures' proposal. We are prepared to accept the terms as presented, including the adjusted pricing structure, acknowledgement of new ownership, and the 4-month transition provision. We also extend an apology for how your departure was managed. We recognize this does not alter past events, but hope it establishes a foundation for a more respectful, professional relationship moving forward. Thank you for your consideration and for demonstrating what authentic leadership exemplifies. I read it 3 times. I forwarded it to Alexandra. Her response arrived immediately. Well, that's about as close to a corporate mea culpa as you're likely to receive. I leaned back, observing the city lights flickering across the skyline below. The metropolis pulsed with energy. People rushing, striving, climbing. And me? I wasn't climbing anymore. I had already ascended. Monday morning began quietly. Too quietly. The calm that precedes revelation. I arrived at Summit headquarters just before 8 a.m., coffee in hand, and opened my inbox. There it was, a flood of overnight alerts, media inquiries, and internal updates. The story had broken. CEO ousted in corporate restructuring. NextGen board removes Marcus Blackwell amid technology crisis. The headline appeared everywhere: technology blogs, financial news outlets, even trending on LinkedIn under #LeadershipMatters. I read the article, scanning for familiar names. It quoted a source close to the board, stating that Marcus's failure to assess critical technological dependencies, combined with the abrupt loss of access to quantum matrix, had created irreparable operational complications and compromised multiple product timelines. He was dismissed, effective immediately. Elise confirmed it within the hour. It's confirmed. Marcus cleared out his office at 7 a.m. No announcement, no theatrics. He avoided eye contact completely on his way out. The interim CEO is Andrew Harrington, former operations executive at StellarCore before their merger. Complete stabilization specialist. Yes, they're rebranding the AI platform to distance it from Phase 3. Staff are internally calling it the Phoenix Project. She followed with an animation of someone extinguishing a fire. I smiled. But even amid this upheaval, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt centered, resolved, because while Marcus's downfall had been inevitable, what followed mattered more. At 11 a.m., I entered our product development center for a strategy session. Our engineers were preparing a technical presentation for new enterprise clients, many who had reached out after witnessing NextGen falter. David, our CTO, pulled me aside before we began. "You won't believe this," he said. NextGen submitted a draft of the public licensing agreement. They actually included your name. I stared in disbelief. "You're not serious." "Completely serious." They wrote, "Technology developed by Dr. Sophia Bennett, licensed exclusively through Summit Ventures." Prominently displayed. Legal must have mandated it. I examined the document, seeing my name. Official. Public. Undeniable. It felt like drawing a full breath after months underwater. "They never acknowledged it before," I whispered. "Not when I built the platform. Not when it launched. Not even after the first 1,000,000 users." "Well," David said, "they're acknowledging it now. Unmistakably." By Tuesday, we conducted a private strategy meeting to evaluate the incoming migration requests. 14 former NextGen clients had requested to preview our new architecture. 4 of them, had been considered unreachable accounts during my tenure there. Executives had dismissed the idea before I even completed my presentation. But now they were approaching us, not because of an impressive slideshow or clever marketing, but because they finally recognized what I had always maintained. The value wasn't in the branding but in the substance. That afternoon, I received a call from someone I hadn't spoken with in years. Naomi Parker. She had been one of the only other senior women in NextGen's leadership during my early years. Brilliant, determined, compassionate yet focused. We had collaborated closely until she was marginalized 2 years before me, during another organizational realignment. "Sophia," she said warmly, "I've been following this situation unfold. You can't imagine what it has meant for women still navigating the tech industry, particularly those over 40. I paused, uncertain how to respond. "You didn't just succeed," Naomi continued. "You demonstrated that composure and persistence can coexist with strategic thinking, that you can outmaneuver someone without compromising your principles. It's uncommon and it's powerful." Her words resonated long after our conversation ended, because this was the impact I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't merely about professional redemption. It was about sending a message: you can defend yourself without becoming the antagonist. By Wednesday, NextGen issued an official company-wide statement. NextGen Solutions has established a strategic partnership with Summit Ventures for continued access to the quantum matrix platform. We remain committed to operational excellence as we evolve under new leadership. Buried at the conclusion was a simple line acknowledging me by name. No elaboration, no embellishment, just facts. It was sufficient. Meanwhile, our marketing team at Summit was finalizing a keynote presentation I'd been invited to deliver at the International Technology Leadership Summit next month. The title: When Systems Declare You Replaceable and You Prove Otherwise. That evening, I returned home to find a handwritten note in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a simple card with one line. You've become the story I tell my daughter when she believes she lacks courage. No name, no signature. Just that. I held the card against my heart and allowed myself to feel it. Not pride, not vindication. Just clarity. This wasn't about what they had taken from me. It was about what I had reclaimed. My name, my work, my worth. And I was only beginning. 1 year after I carried my belongings out of NextGen's glass tower in a plain cardboard box, I walked into Summit's headquarters as morning light streamed through the expansive windows. It felt like a quiet milestone. No ceremony, no announcements. Just the soft echo of my footsteps and the steady rhythm of a company I had transformed from the ground up as I proceeded to my office. David waved me over from the strategy center. You'll want to see this, he said, gesturing with evident satisfaction. I entered to find our analytics dashboard displayed on the wall, cycling through real-time data from our clients. The metrics were undeniable. Client retention, 97%. New enterprise integrations, 16 in the previous quarter. Revenue growth, up 35% year over year. Then David revealed the most gratifying statistic. NextGen's projected market share decline, 24%. Net migration to Summit infrastructure, 11 of their top 25 former accounts. They attempted to minimize it initially, David noted. But investors are asking pointed questions. And now finally they're responding truthfully. I looked at him questioningly. Responding how? He turned the screen to display the official statement just published on NextGen's investor relations portal. We acknowledge that strategic misjudgments, including the mismanagement of key technological partnerships, contributed to the challenges we encountered last year. We also recognize the foundational contributions of former executives, including Dr. Sophia Bennett, in developing the operational frameworks that continue to define industry standards. They stated it, not just behind closed doors, not whispered in apology, but publicly. My name in print connected to my work. I leaned against the table, momentarily silent. David observed me, then added, It's not everything, but it's meaningful. It's enough, I said quietly. I didn't need credit. I needed truth. Later that day, I reviewed the latest reports from our legal department. 3 additional licensing agreements were finalized. One had been NextGen's longest-standing partner. Now fully integrated into our ecosystem. Alexandra messaged me shortly afterward. You realize they'll attempt to buy time with rebranding, new leadership, and media campaigns. But the fundamental issue remains unresolved. They forgot the people who established their foundation. And you reminded them without ever raising your voice. I didn't respond immediately. I simply sat there, rereading her message, letting it resonate. Because that was the essence, wasn't it? All the strategy, all the calculated moves, all the times I maintained composure when they expected me to falter. It wasn't about ego. It was about demonstrating that dignity and influence aren't mutually exclusive. That evening, as I walked through Summit's quiet corridors, I noticed something new near the entrance. A framed inscription. One I hadn't authorized but immediately appreciated. It read, The true legacy of innovation isn't the product. It's the people who make it possible. Beneath it, in smaller text, was my name. I stood there for an extended moment, watching the reflection of hallway lights in the glass. Then my phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. It was a message from Elise. Just wanted to let you know I officially start Monday. Thank you for keeping the opportunity open. It feels like coming home. I smiled. Elise had been among the last to leave NextGen. Loyal almost to a fault, but now finally ready to grow beyond the limitations that environment had imposed. Welcome back, I replied. There's so much more we're going to create. That night, I opened a small container from the back of my closet. It still contained items from that final day at NextGen. My coffee mug, my team's farewell card, the pen they presented me when we surpassed $75 million in revenue. I examined each object not with regret, but with perspective, because those years hadn't been wasted. They had formed me, strengthened me. They had made this moment possible. A year ago, they told me I was an impediment. What they never comprehended was that I wasn't holding the company back. I was holding it together. And now I was building something even more substantial on my own terms with the right people, and with my name exactly where it belonged. Not hidden in the footnotes. Not buried in someone else's presentation, but written clearly, confidently, permanently. At the forefront,